Hello guys, how's it going? Hold on, let me change the screen here. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Paleolithic Age. Um, so let's get started. There is a Google Doc. It's not very long. It's just like some vocabulary terms, but let's get to it. All right, so what is the Paleolithic? Paleolithic is a fancy word for old stone, right? So paleo means old and lithic means stone. Um, so if I say megalith, that just means a very giant stone, or a microlith, that's a tiny stone. So Paleolithic is the old Stone Age, and this refers to the time in human history when foraging or gathering, such as leaves, grass, mushrooms, insects, berries, nuts, these sorts of things, gathering these types of food, hunting, and fishing are the primary means of these people obtaining their foods. Okay. Their diets are dependent on the fluctuation of the natural ecosystems. So, for instance, when these people are going to a certain river, if they're overfishing it, this is going to be something that kind of is the forefront of their minds, is the depleted fish, right? And if it's something that they depend on, then they may have to kind of figure out what they're going to do, or they'll travel to different areas to fish, or maybe they'll supplement their diets with other things aside from fish. Okay. They're also thinking about, what happens when there's a drought and plants and animals or plants particularly kind of dry up, and they don't fruit as well as they normally do. Or when it dries up and there's not enough food for, the deer or the buffalo or whatever kind of animal it is they're looking for, those animals are also traveling around in search of food. And right, all these species want to survive. Okay. So what is different about human foraging? Because animals forage, animals look for food in all kinds of places. But one difference when we get to humans is our ability to communicate. Okay. And language was developed about 50,000 years ago. We talked about that yesterday. So when we can communicate with one another, we can gain knowledge, we can pass knowledge on to younger generations, and we can kind of work together. We kind of create this collective culture in helping each other out. Okay. So if you're thinking about foraging in this way, you could say that foraging is what made us human. The fact that we're communicating and we're climbing out of the trees and we're starting to walk on 2 feet, and we kind of lose all this hair and the prehensile tail, and our hands are looking different, our pelvic bones are different, our brains are bigger because we are consuming more protein now. All of these things were triggered by this need for food and this search for food. So the environment and human evolution, our development, they go hand in hand together. They work together. Okay. So the climate and the environment is going to determine what life was like back then. Just like I said yesterday, if you look outside and it's going to rain, you might decide to stay home. Maybe you're not going to go see that movie with your friend, or you might say, well, I'll just get a rain jacket or an umbrella or boots or whatever it is. No one had to tell you to do that. These are just decisions that you made up based on the weather or the climate, the environment. And so the environment dictates all the time what we do and what we don't do, right? We just had a hurricane that came through, and it was supposed to hit Texas, but it really didn't. We didn't see too much damage. But all of a sudden, it was like a chain reaction. The schools canceled. They had buses. They had all this stuff, right? The shelter in place or the evacuation. All that was stemmed from the climate and the environment. Okay. Also, these people must have detailed knowledge of the environment that they live in. Just like you guys do. You know where the HEB and the Krogers are, and you know where these stores are to where you can go and get your food. Well, in the Paleolithic Age, they knew where to go to get fresh water. They knew where they could find those berries, or where those certain deer were roaming around, or where they can go and fish. And another thing, they have to cover a large territory to forage. Um, it's not the easiest thing to do to rely solely on hunting and foraging. This could take, you know, 10, 12, 13 hours of them walking, dozens of miles, if you will, just for food. Okay. So the foragers, they're constantly moving around. They're nomadic. We're going to see that term a little bit later. So they're nomads. They're constantly moving around. They'll make temporary encampments or kind of places where they settle in for a day or two or a couple of days, and then they're always moving. And they're typically following the food source. Um, that's just kind of how it is. Or as the seasons change, they go to different locations because they know they can get different types of foods in different areas. So one thing about this is that the population grows extremely slowly at this time. You might have small bands of people kind of traveling together at this point. Definitely no more than 25, 30 people are together at one point. And most of the times it's fewer than that. It's about 15 people. Now, if we're thinking about a reproduction and men and women and sex and having babies, that didn't happen very, very often. I mean, a woman would get pregnant, every 4 to 6 years. And there's several reasons for that. The woman would breastfeed the offspring 3 or 4 years. So 3 or 4-year-olds, still breastfeeding off the mother because it's a vital source of nutrients. And these people are foraging, right? So there might be times where there's not enough food. And because the mother is breastfeeding for that long, her body never gets ready to get pregnant again. Okay. So there's kind of like a cycle that women go through. Once they're done breastfeeding, the body prepares itself and then it's ready to carry another child. But with them, because of the breast milk and the breastfeeding going for, 3 to 4 years, we don't see offspring being born very often. Also, the mother would have to carry these children. And I don't know about you. I have 2 kids, and I definitely can't imagine carrying 2 kids around and then whatever supplies I need or tools that I made or food that I'm trying to carry. So it would be very difficult if a woman had to kind of take care of 4 or 5 and 6 kids. Nowadays, technically a woman can have a child, every year to a year and a half, especially if she's not worried about food and survival and all that other stuff. So just kind of keep these things in mind. So as early humans begin migrating, they adapt to the new environments. They develop tools. As time progresses throughout the early Paleolithic to the later Paleolithic, we're going to see these tools are extensive. They're highly diverse. They're specialized. And they become more refined. They become better at making them. And this is going to kind of help the Paleolithic people kind of deal with the constraints or the obstacles that the environment is kind of subjecting them to. So, a couple of terms. Biological evolution. I have the 2 GIFs here because instead of like telling you and writing all these words, the biological evolution, these are physical characteristics. So on this one, right, you're seeing that it begins here as a cell, then it multiplies, and then it's turning into different things. These are physical things, just like on the face, right, where we go from early hominids all the way to modern man. These are physical things that have changed within a species, things that we can see, okay? Natural selection, this is a term that many of you probably are familiar with. This has to do with, reproducing or mating. And it's this idea that, for instance, for humans or animals, it's a little bit easier to understand in that, for instance, a female will choose a male counterpart because of certain characteristics that will prolong the survival of her offspring. So, and this could be any kind of characteristic. right? My parents had a sheep ranch, and they still do. And I remember when I did 4-H and FFA, and whenever I would show the sheep, my freshman and sophomore year, they wanted kind of shorter, stockier lambs. And so my stepmother would get a certain ram, and she's like, okay, this ewe is kind of shorter and stockier, highly muscular, and they would breed. And then the offsprings would have those characteristics. In my junior and senior year, the judges wanted the lambs to be longer and leaner and kind of a more elegant, like giraffe-like look, which was kind of weird from short and stocky. But as soon as my parents knew that, they went out and bought this very fancy looking buck and when a couple of females. And then we had, very fancy, elegant, elongated offspring, right? So we do this all the time, and species do this all the time because everybody wants to survive. Also, if you're studying biology and you go through natural selection, this is kind of also where they would talk about like mutations, right? Things within the genes that happen, by accident, if you will. And sometimes those mutations are good things and allow a species to carry on and survive and be actually stronger. And then sometimes a mutation has a negative effect. And if it's a negative effect, it takes a matter of time before that mutation is kind of breeded out of the species. Because nobody's going to want to like have children with that male or female if there's a problem. All right, so that's natural selection. So sociocultural evolution. This focuses on ways in which early human societies created culture. Culture, it's complex, but for instance, it's, art and music and pottery and clothing, the type of housing. It's everything that is culturally part of us, okay? So the Paleolithic humans, they're not just simple cavemen, right? And they're not only concerned with just conquering their next meal. As they start to kind of band together and to create these bands and then tribes and then communities, they're very deliberate in what they do and don't do, and they start to kind of create all kinds of stuff, and so it's pretty amazing. And of course, nowadays our social cultural evolution, everybody's constantly creating all kinds of stuff, right? So an example of this social cultural evolution would be the Neanderthals in Europe and Southwest Asia. They had a system of religious beliefs. They performed rituals such as funerals. This is our ancestor, right? The first kind of burials took place, and we still have funerals to this day. It's still very much a part of our culture. Some people say it's very expensive to die. A casket alone can cost you thousands of dollars. But the point is usually at funerals, there's flowers, there's loved ones that gather and kind of remember and reminisce about the person that has just died. So we have the Neanderthals in the Shanidar cave, that's modern day northeastern Iraq. They uncovered bodies of Neanderthals that were covered in flowers, right? And this has never been done before, prior to them discovering these bodies. And so it kind of suggests that there's something beyond death. Like they believe that maybe there's something beyond death. It also kind of links to like maybe this is the beginnings of kind of spirituality or religion. But either way, they're not just, oh, someone dies, we just keep moving and just kind of leave them there. They're actually taking the time and consideration to kind of prepare the body and to lay it to rest. So here's the Shanidar cave here. You see it here, Zagros Mountains, and it's this. And of course you have the Neanderthal skull here, right? Here's another one here. So this is kind of what it looks like as they're entering in here. Another thing about the Neanderthals is many of their bodies had this kind of red pigmentation, what they call ochre. And it's kind of like clay, or you would mix this kind of clay with water and they would kind of slather it on the bodies. And so a lot of the bodies that they uncovered had this red color to it. And all that is when the meat kind of decays and is, withers away or is eaten away or erodes, the bones absorb that pigmentation. So we see this again in, for instance, in when they uncovered some bodies from thousands of years ago in Mexico or in South America, they found that some of the skeletons were stained like a black color, and they found that it was bitterum, it's an element that's in the ground. And so as the bodies are decomposing, the bones are absorbing this black color. Or in the Mediterranean, for instance, during the ancient Greeks or whatever, a lot of the jaw bones were this kind of greenish color, and that's from bronze and copper. And what they found is it's because they were putting these coins, these bronze or copper coins, in the people's mouth to pay the ferrymen so they can cross the river Styx, which, the river Styx, that's how you get to the other side in Greek mythology. And then, of course, with Christianity and Catholicism, they said, well, no, it's not the ferryman for the river Styx. It's just it's just to pay the ferryman to get to the other side, right, to paradise, if you will. So we see a lot of this stuff, and in Russia, they found a body in Sandapur, right? This is like 35,000-year-old body, and he was like decked out with mammoth jewelry and bands, and he had a beautiful kind of reddish color to his skeleton, and the fact that he was buried with all this kind of somewhat fancy stuff plays to the part that maybe he was a ruler or a tribal leader, or he had some sort of wealth or status in his community. So these kind of burials can teach and kind of give a lot of clues as to what's going on. Okay, so what is culture exactly? All right, culture is a term that encompasses the full range of learned human behavioral patterns. Many of these behaviors are linked to our survival, right? Cultures evolved and develop in specific environments depending on the context. Communities do not only survive, but they flourish in unique and dynamic ways. So culture is the type of religion that develops in an area. It's a type of music that's listened to, the clothing that's wear, the jewelry that's made. It's their beliefs on marriage and having children. It's their ideas on property and land and power. It's about what they're making and what they're creating and what they're trading with other people, and eventually what we're buying and selling. Anything that has to do with human beings that is learned and you can pass it on. This is culture. Okay. Homo sapiens they had not changed much anatomically for the last 120,000 years. So physically, we weren't really changing, right? But in those years, in the 120,000 years, the past 120,000 years, we have undergone a massive cultural evolution, right? Our cultural creativity, rather than our physical transformation, becomes the central ways in which humans cope with the demands of nature, right? It's our ability to create, and our creations can bring safety and protection and comfort. It can motivate us, right? It can, our creations can bring about call to actions and call to arms and all this other stuff. And the fact that we, nowadays we like to showcase, right? You guys wear certain types of clothes or listen to certain types of music, or, and you like, you drive and you see people's stickers, right? They'll tell you, the stickers on their car will tell you what they're into or not into. So we're all about our culture, right? And kind of showcasing our culture. And we like that we have different cultures and different backgrounds. Okay. So the Paleolithic lifestyle, there's small communities. Not always. Sometimes you'll get like a lone person walking around or just a couple of people, but sometimes we do see these bands of 20 to 25 members. They're nomads. They're nomadic. To be nomadic just means you roam around. You're constantly travel, and you're in search of resources, fresh water, food, shelter, protection, these stuff, these sorts of things, right? Resources for you to survive. The Paleolithic humans have very little control over the environment. Yes, they make complex tools. Yes, at this point, they have figured out how to make fire. Some people say that lightning had caused fire, and that's kind of how they figured it out. And others will say, no, it's just kind of trial and error, kind of making mistakes, and then all of a sudden there's fire, and then they kind of figure it out. Either way, it doesn't matter. Fire is very important. With fire, we see the beginnings of them being able to control the environment, but it's still very, it's not very sophisticated yet. It takes them a while to figure this stuff out. Okay, so the Echualin tools, these are definitely fancier than the old Wallen tools that we saw today. And there's different sizes, right? These people were making hooks for fishing, spears, hatchets, or small, kind of axes. So let's see. Let's watch this, see if this one works. Okay. I'm at home right now doing this so you guys can see this video.
My name is Nicholas Toth. I am the co-director of the Stone Age Institute and a professor of anthropology at Indiana University. And I want to show you what our ancestors started doing about 2.5 million years ago that we can see on the African continent. The earliest archaeological record are very simple stone tools, and they discovered around this time that if you took two natural cobbles, say from a gravel bar of a river, you could hit one against the other one and knock off these razor-sharp pieces of stone that archaeologists call flakes. So in a matter of a few seconds, I'm producing these very sharp razor blade-like materials that can be used for, say, cutting up the carcass of an animal that you might kill, or maybe you find that's been left by carnivores and a little bit of meat left on the bones that you can cut off. So these are literally razor sharp. If I were to drag this across my finger, I would cut myself quite badly. So when you think of early stone tools, don't think that they're not razor sharp. They're as sharp as a surgical scalpel. And we can use these for a range of activities, as our ancestors did in the early Stone Age. Butchering animals, working wood, say you want to make a spear for hunting, or a digging stick for digging up roots and tubers from the branch of a tree. These are great tools for the shaping that you would do for that. And so we see this trajectory in human evolution starting around 2.5 million years ago of these very simple types of stone tools. And it's soon after that, by about 2 million years ago, that we have really good evidence for the expansion of the human brain, for the spread out of Africa shortly after that, the reduction in the size of the teeth and the jaws of our ancestors as well. And starting about 1.5 million years ago, they started getting more ambitious and making forms that we call so-called hand axes. They were probably held in the hand and used as cutting tools. This would be one, it's a more refined one from perhaps about 0.5 million years ago or so, made out of flint. And so the idea of this is you would take a larger piece of stone and kind of imagine that form in the middle of it, and then again using a hammer slowly but surely marching around the edges and knocking off flakes. So I'm using the scar of the flake that was just knocked off as a striking platform to go in the other direction. And the idea is you want to march all the way around this piece. So I'm not thinking too much about the final shape yet. I'm just kind of trying to produce an edge around the circumference of this piece. And grinding the edge. And then you take a softer material. It could be a piece of hard wood, a fragment of elephant tusk. In this case, I'm using an antler of a deer. And you're biting right into the edge. And you're able to remove much longer, thinner flakes when you do that. And this is a way of controlling flaking. See how I did that? And by doing that, going around, you can carefully shape the edge, thin it, and make a superb butchery tool. And when people ask, why did they bother to make something this big? They were butchering large animals, sizes of zebra and buffalo on occasion. These are big mammals that weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And would you rather use a razor blade for butchering one of these animals, or would you rather use basically a two-fisted tool like this? You have a lot more cutting edge, a lot more weight behind what you're doing as well. And so when we look at the history of technology, you're seeing changes in the refinement of stone tools over time. By the time you get to Neanderthals and early modern humans, they're probably starting to haft tools onto handles, either using some kind of adhesive material like pitch from a pine tree, or by using sinew or other material to lash tools together as well. And so we see this progression and refinement of technology through time, especially.
Okay, see, we're good with that. Kind of cool. All right. So language. Language is perhaps one of the most important innovations of the Paleolithic era. We show 50,000 years ago, we get language, right? It allows for increasingly complex social structures, enhanced capacity for deliberation, morality, spirituality, meaning-making, problem-solving, community. All these things are very important, and they all start with language. And not just any kind of language, but a unifying language, a language that that group of people know and understand. Okay. When we talk about later empires, it's going to be the first thing that they're going to do is have a unifying language over their land. This is very important because now we can go anywhere in that empire and we can communicate with one another. So language starts here in the Paleolithic era, and it's going to continue to develop, and it's going to continue to be very, very important to the development of civilization and to empires and societies and countries and all this other stuff. So artwork. So though artwork from 35,000 years ago is rare, there is ample evidence of cave paintings and statuettes from later periods. Right, so let's look at some artwork. Okay, so cave painting. Let's look at this. There's a couple of videos. We won't watch them all. All right, but some of these.
Anxious about your next technical interview?
What?
You won't be if you are coached by tech leads and hiring managers.
Get rid of that. So this is in a 360-degree animated cave. Oh, please. Come on. We're almost done. Let's see. Let's put this on so you guys can read it as it goes. Oh, come on.
In 1879, amateur archaeologist Marcelino Sanz de Sautola and his young daughter Maria explored a dark cave in northern Spain. When Maria wandered off by herself, she made an amazing discovery. They were standing inside a site of ancient art. The walls and roofs decorated with prehistoric paintings and engravings, ranging from 19 to 35,000 years old. Similar marks of our ancestors have been preserved in caves all over the world. The oldest we've found were made up to 40,000 years ago. What do these images tell us about the ancient human mind and the lives of their creators? These early artists mixed minerals, clay, charcoal.
Oh, this video is not very good right now.
Cave in northern Spain. When Maria wandered off by herself, she made an amazing discovery. They were standing inside a site of ancient art. The walls and roofs decorated with prehistoric paintings and engravings, ranging from 19 to 35,000 years old. Similar marks of our ancestors have been preserved in caves all over the world. The oldest we've found were made up to 40,000 years ago. What do these images tell us about the ancient human mind and the lives of their creators? These early artists mixed minerals, clay, charcoal, and ochre with spit or animal fat to create paint. They drew with their hands and tools, like pads of moss, twigs, bones, and hair. In many instances, their images follow the contours of the cave to create depth and shape.
All right, this is
the
not very good.
The most common depictions are of geometric shapes.
We're just going to not watch this one. I put the Prezi link is here on top of your guys' document. So there's some really cool videos on, that one's a really cool video, but you can go in there and kind of watch that. All right. Let's see if this one works.
It doesn't matter if it's a cold day or a hot day. Either way, it's a work day.
So this is just kind of like a virtual tour of this cave. So what they did is they've gone in there and they use technology to scan all of the walls, and they kind of recreate this tour. So you kind of see the animals on the top part here. I always feel like I'm traveling through someone's intestines when I watch this video. Right. So, and this is actually what the cave would look like inside, right? So it's a good recreation of this. All right, so you get the idea here. All right. Now let's see if her video works.
California's Death Valley is the hottest desert in North America. But for one explorer, it's a scientific playground that hides the lost art of ancient people.
So at the moment, I'm standing in a place called Fossil Falls. This used to be a waterfall. The Koso people lived right in this vicinity, and so you could think of this sort of dried out waterfall as being their backyard. And just like we do today, they decorated their backyard.
Rock art like this can be over tens of thousands of years old. The first people left rock carvings and cave paintings all over Europe, Asia, and over time, the Americas. Archaeologist Genevieve von Petzinger has followed that trail all the way to scorching California.
Last time we checked, it was 112 degrees Fahrenheit. We're only 2 valleys over from Death Valley right here, so this is pretty much as hot as it gets.
It's rocky going, but worth the effort.
This is basically like a big tube that goes from surface level down into the falls. We've only been here for about 15 minutes so far, and just in this one little area, we've already found some new engravings, which is really exciting. Even if we can only say it's a bighorn sheep, obviously it was meaningful to them. They went to the effort of crawling in here to make it. Not only did they engrave some really interesting images in here, but there's also very cool acoustic properties. So the way it sounds in here when I'm talking, there's a really interesting echo going on. So it's interesting to wonder if it wasn't just about the pictures, but maybe also about the sound at the same time. Getting to go hike around and explore. It's what I dreamed of when I was a little kid, so it's pretty cool that I actually get to do it now that I'm a grown-up.
The older the art, the harder it is to find.
I'm sure you're like, how can you tell how old this little scratchy thing on the rock is? Well, when you first scraped through the rock, it would have looked really white. So kind of like this modern graffiti K over here, which you should never do. Don't be defacing the rock panels. We've got our modern K, and you can see how white it is. The fact that this one's starting to fade back towards the dark color tells us that it's older. If you think about it, these are like the great-great-great-great-great-grandparents of emojis. Simple little characters with huge amounts of information embedded into them. But you need to be part of the culture group to be able to decipher it. You have to know the code.
10,000-year-old emojis. And there's even more to explore.
They're finding new caves all the time. There's some I know, but I'm not allowed to talk about yet. And, that's the thing, is that there's only a few of us doing this, and we need more people, is really the bottom line. There are so many caves out there just waiting to be discovered.
All right, that's cool. So like she says, it's kind of like early emojis, right? So what is this? I'm sure you guys know what this means. I love you more than pizza. Ugh. There should be another one that pops up here with the emojis. Emojis can have all different kinds of meanings for different people. Okay, come on. Yeah, this one's really cool. I wish we could have watched that one. Let me see. Let's see if I just have to restart the slide. Come on. Okay, maybe it's not going to work. Well, the picture I had there was it's like the top emoji that's used in all the 50 states. So if you look at the presentation, you might find it's kind of funny. Oh, here it goes. All right, come on. Like, what does this stuff even mean, right? I know you guys know what some of this stuff means. Like, this is Idaho right here. I'm not sure why the eggplant's there, because I think they're known for growing potatoes, right? So there's that. I'm not even sure what does the apple mean. You got to go see the dentist. I have no idea. King, this is Louisiana. All right, so here's the top emojis that are used, or top emoji that's used in all the 50 states. So just like she said, these pictures, they may not seem very elaborate, but they have a lot of meaning, right? We put a lot of meaning to images. Not to mention, I don't know if you guys ever been to Houston or any city, there's a lot of graffiti, and a lot of that stuff there is more meaning behind it than just what the image is, or what the image is, okay? All right, so portable figures dated back to the Paleolithic times have also been found. We see a lot of carved facial features. Many of the statues, they do accentuate sexual organs, especially on the women. That date back to 25,000-year-old figurines, the Dolne Visconti, or the Venus statues we see in modern-day Czech Republic. And these Venus statues are actually all over the place. And all this says is, like, there's this desire to create beautiful things, right? And it also kind of suggests maybe the importance of either the female form or the male form, or fertility and religion, all these different things. So here's an example of the Venuses, right? And there's a lot of different images, right? So France, Austria, Slovakia, France, Russia, Switzerland, and this is all the female forms. And you're probably thinking, what the heck am I looking at? But this is what they were creating, right? This is what they were making. All right, so that's all I have for today. Paleolithic oats, summarizing what a Paleolithic lifestyle was like. Constantly traveling around, being nomadic, small groups of people, hunting and gathering for their food, stone making tools, manipulation of fire, and I'm sure you can kind of come up with a few things. The development of language and more refined art, cave paintings, all of this stuff. All right, so I know this one's a little bit longer, and I apologize for that, and the videos weren't working very well. If you have any questions, please let me know in Google Classroom. See you later.